Welcome to Empowerment Radio. My name is Dr. Friedemann, and I'm so glad that you decided to join me. Empowerment Radio is about giving you the insights, tools, and solutions to address some of the most challenging aspects of our daily lives. So sit back, relax, and empower yourself. We just talked about love styles and also those feelings that we really want to have in a loving relationships. Now, Gary, back to those love styles. Let's say someone has problems with relationships, but they don't really know what they're doing, quote unquote, wrong. So you talked about secure love style is secure attachment, but then there is also avoidance, and the other one is the anxious one. Can you just tell us the difference and how people could figure out which one they fall into?
Yeah, that's easy. And, the funny thing is when we talk about, what they're doing wrong, at one time it was actually right, probably for the little one, because every one of these, the brain took the best deal available. At some point, it wasn't good to try to be close and warm in a relationship. So the best deal for the anxious was, they got intermittent attention and somebody meeting their needs. They're not there. So their brain develops what's called a fight response, right? They hyperactivate. They're going to lock that thing down. And so for them, it's like they're always afraid love is going away. And they're the ones that ask, so where were you last night? Do you still love me? Why didn't you text me back in 10 minutes? Sometimes, and they are always afraid that they're not enough. And when does love go away? And they're so afraid of it that it becomes self-fulfilling prophecy. The very amount of anxiety, sometimes they don't trust. And someone says, I'm tired of being in a relationship where they don't see me or they don't trust me, because they're called preoccupied. They're preoccupied with their own pain. And they can't really fully step into another person. Then there's the avoidance. Go ahead. You were going to ask something?
Well, I was just wondering about the anxious. Is it common that people that have an anxious love style also don't really feel lovable or don't really feel like that they deserve to be committed to, and therefore, they go through this, like you said, clamming it down or holding on to it and probably becoming needy and pleasing all at the same time?
They do. They most of the anxious didn't feel worthy. You can almost bank on that, right? They never got a right to have a right to have their own needs met, or they didn't get a real right to belong. They got more right to be separate, and some part of them desperately wanted to feel like they belonged. That's what's underneath that. They long for cuddling a lot of the times. They long to sometimes they really want, they'd like a we, but what it feels like to the others, they want closeness so much it feels like enmeshment. But there's some part of, when does love go away? How do I lock it down? And they're very preoccupied. If you ask them about their past, they will tell you story after story for hours and hours, and they get lost in the details. They remember everything. And they can't escape the constant spinning around past pain.
And then there is the avoider. What's the avoider like?
Now, the avoider was kind of the opposite. The avoider, the avoidants, a lot of times they weren't welcome with joy into the world, right? They're the ones that were ignored. Maybe the parents didn't really step into their feelings much or attune to them, and they learned a long time ago they had to be on their own to survive. It's avoidant babies actually learn to walk sooner than secure babies, because some part of their brain says, no one's got my back, I have to do this by myself. So they tone down attachment. They're afraid of being depended on and depending on somebody else. There's two types of them. There's the emotionally dismissive person. If you could be at a funeral and they'd say, just get over it. They can't attune. And there's the avoidants who are afraid of just being in a relationship. They want to be in one, but they also it doesn't feel safe, so they're constantly sabotaging it. The
Mm.
thing is, these tend to become your Marlboro mates. You could be in a marriage with them, and they're in the same house, but it feels like they're in a different universe. They don't attune well, and they don't create very good partnership. Their biggest fear is, am I going to be dependent on, or do I have to be dependent here?
Now, what I find interesting about some of my clients, it seems like that the ones with the anxious love style are drawn to the ones that are in the avoidant love style. Is that something that you are noticing too, that the ones that need the most love seem to pick the ones that are not available or the least committed?
Actually, there's research for this. Your intuition serves you well. I call it the law of attraction from hell. The secure, in the book, I talk about the secure take no BS and they give no BS. The secure tend to, because they have these four feelings, they feel welcome, they feel worthy, they feel cherished, and they feel empowered. When you feel that, you don't find someone who just empowers you. You don't find someone who's a taker or won't give to you. They tend to pair off, which tends to leave the dating pool with more anxious and avoidant just by sheer numbers of subtraction.
Mm-hmm.
But they are, because for the anxious, that a lot of times anxious had some hit of intrusiveness, or a parent that wasn't there for them, they were there more for themselves. And so when they get that first hit of distance, they think, wow, my prayers are answered. But then when they find out that that distance is never going to become close, it becomes their worst nightmare. So you're right. And the avoidance won't pair off with the other avoidance because there's not enough glue to keep them together.
Right, definitely.
Yes.
But I mean, that's when the avoidance also feels very smothered easily by the anxious one. And it's just an interesting, I think, combination that I think, like you said, the law of attraction from hell is creating. And, like all of those challenges, probably it's also an opportunity to really see, yeah, I need to work on myself and that's partially really one of the things I love about your work, that you do go into the more subconscious patterning and those beliefs that really come from our childhood. And just like in my work, really see that as the root causes of challenges that we have decades later and that just repeat themselves.
Oh, absolutely. These feelings, I talk about love as the operating system. We use these feelings in all parts of our life. They don't just stay in a tiny little corner called love, they go elsewhere. I mean, if you want to see how the anxious and avoidant, I talk about this couple in the book. She was anxious and he was avoidant, right? And the way it worked was she grew up in a family where there was a lot of moving around, and she never truly got to belong. And some part of her really wanted to belong. She was tired of not having the closeness, being put off and all that stuff. He was avoidant. Now, he had the exact opposite. I call this a right to separate and belong. The real secure right is I get to go out and be a me, and I get to come back to a really nice, supportive, wonderful, attuned we. It comes online as a toddler. When the toddler goes out and realizes, wait a minute, I thought mom and dad and I were the same. I'm over there and they're over there. Oh, I must be a me. But toddlers also want you in this room. If you walk out of the room, they know they're vulnerable. So they want to be a me. They want to play by their toys by themselves, but they want to make sure mom and dad are looking over them.
Right.
And then the feeling is cherished and protected. When my son was little, going through that, he had this little game. It was called go to the top of the stairs, make out a funny sound, and see if dad still runs track. Right? Cherished and it was a game because you'd go, and then I'd know, oh, he's at the top of the stairs again, right? But he knew he was cherished and protected. It was safe being in a we.
So what are those four feelings again? Just remind us.
Welcomed with joy, worthy and nourished to have your needs met. That's cherished and protected. I can be a me in a we. It's a Goldilocks zone. A me and a we, not just me, like maybe an avoidant, would be, or not just a we like maybe some anxious would want it, right? And then there's empowered with choice. I get to create, I get to create my own experience. I get to be the standard of my own experience. Mom and dad don't tell me who I have to be and what I have to be, right? And then it grows up that we get to create our own experience. I get a right to assert, which means I get to have a voice and choice. Secure couples share influence where others don't. And then when you get all four feelings of, if a child or in any relationship, you feel welcomed and worthy and cherished and empowered, you feel pretty good, and then you feel lovable. And if you're out there in the moment, if you're out there listening, just think for your last relationships, if you're single or the one you're currently in, 1 to 10. How welcomed with joy do I feel? 1 to 10. How worthy and nourished do I feel to reach out my needs and expect that I'll get something back that reasonably matches my request? How 1 to 10, how cherished and protected that I can go out, explore my world, and come back to a safe haven of support. And then 1 to 10, how empowered with choice. If any of those are under 7 or 8, you're probably thinking, if one of those is missing, well, yeah, there's a few things we could work on. 2, and you're probably thinking, what's my best friend's therapist number? And 3 or 4 is when you get into a problem relationship or even a toxic relationship. Those 4 feelings, if you can track them, you can just ask a couple. I've done it many times at the beginning. Maybe the first or second, I'll just ask them that question. I have a pretty good idea what's going on.
I mean, I love that because it's really a great litmus test for where the relationship is at. Because a lot of people, I'm sure, would say, hey, I'm really cherish and protect you. But maybe for the spouse or the partner, it doesn't feel like it. It may feel like overbearing or smothering. And, I talked yesterday to a client who, complained about her husband, how he's always lecturing her and trying to improve her, skiing and other things. And, in the end, you could say, well, he probably feels like, oh, I'm empowering my wife. But for her, it feels disempowering because she doesn't have the space to do her own thing. So it's a very interesting way of just seeing your needs and noticing whether they are met.
Exactly. In that instance, she's probably not feeling a right to create her own experience very well. Getting back to like that couple, you were talking about cherish and protect. This is the key feeling for all couples. Will show me this thing. If there's any inability to create a me and a we, things are off. In this couple, she was really anxious. He had the same missing right. He had a very intrusive mother, always in his face, right? And so for him, a we was, I am going to lose myself. So if I get involved in a we, I'm going to lose myself. So when she would come in, it would feel like that old feeling of being invaded. And what would he do? He would pull away, which was the old feeling of I'm never going to belong.
Right.
So this is the anxious pursues and he avoids, and now suddenly they're down. And in the first session, she goes, I just want a we. And he goes, what do you mean a we? We got 2 me's here, right? And when we allowed him to feel safe, that he could be empowered in a we, and helped him feel that he could be cherished, for who he was. Then it was safe staying. And when he stayed and didn't always go away, then she calmed down. And then we worked on her ability to feel secure enough that she didn't have to always give him a right to separate sometimes. And when both could feel cherished and protected without those other feelings of I will lose love or I will get invaded, suddenly their we just takes off. But we had to find the exact moment of safety, the exact flavor each of them needed. He needed to feel empowered in a we. She needed to feel, I guess for lack of a better word, safe in a we, that it wouldn't go away.
Now, before we go and break, one question about cherished and empowered. What would be like one of those simple ways that you would suggest to the listeners to just cherish and empower their partner more? What's something that, works really well?
For cherish, to cherish is to really see them, to see them for who they are, and to somehow get behind their dreams, to be the safety net under the higher wire, to really see who they are, and to be of support. That way you're the we that helps empower them. That leads to, and empowerment is the biggest thing for couples is sharing influence. It's sharing influence, really listening, not just compromising your soul, but to find a really workable solution where they feel they have influence, and so do you. So I would say, cherish is really seeing and being able to empower their dreams. And empowering is to make sure it's a win-win. It's sharing influence. So both sets of dreams are being empowered. And to make sure you give them a voice, that you truly listen, even when you disagree with it. You don't have to agree with their experience. You just have to listen to it.
Well, that's really, really wonderful advice. And I think when you hear it, you think like, oh yeah, this is a no-brainer. But actually, I think a lot of couples just really have blind spots on those, key emotions that nourish and feed a secure relationship. So when we come back, we'll talk more about the, aforementioned we. What is a we? And how do we nurture them? We. And also about those rights that you mentioned that are just also very important in understanding yourself and how you are in a relationship better. Hi, Dr. Friedemann here. Thank you for tuning into my YouTube channel. If you're interested in learning more about fear and anxiety, here you'll find guided meditations, webinars, and interviews with some of the most renowned experts in the field of empowerment. Delve into the over 230 videos and more to come every week.